Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's been a while since I filmed a video. I don't really know why I'm saying that because I've been filming a reading vlog, but it just feels like a long time since I have filmed like a sit down video. I feel a little bit awkward today. I'm not really too sure why. I'm a little bit unhinged today, but I'm gonna try my best to film this wrap up as normally as I can. But I'm gonna talk about all of the books that I read in February. I read a total of 11 books. I usually have stats on the screen, or I will talk about the average rating and all of that, but I have yet to calculate them. So I'm just gonna put them on the screen once I've calculated them. But I read 11 books this month, and it is a better month than last month. So I'm excited to show you guys all of the books that I read. And also, a lot of these books are in reading vlogs. Without further ado, let us get on with this wrap up. I'm gonna go in order, but I'm gonna group together the series that I read, and so they're not entirely in order. I also have my reading journal with me because I do have my reviews written down, and so I'm probably gonna look down a little bit as I am talking to you guys because all of my thoughts are in my reading journal. We start off very strong. I read Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig, which is the second book in the Shepherd King duology. I read the first book in January. I had a really good time reading the first book, but this one was even better. I rated this higher than the first book. The first book I think was 4 stars because I really liked the additional point of view that you get in this book, and I also really like the extra romance that you get in this book. Even though the main characters don't really have a lot of romance going on, I really like the side characters' romance, and I think I like their romance more than the main characters, but I still really like the story. I love the world building. I felt like the plot and the pacing was done really well. The magic system is really unique, and I've never read anything like this before. And how creepy and dramatic this book was. It was way creepier than the first book I felt, and I just really liked how tense this book made me feel sometimes, and so I enjoyed this book a lot. If you guys do not know this duology, the first book is called One Dark Window, and in this duology, in this world, there are people who have magic and there are people who don't, and these people who have magic, they are said to have caught the fever, caught the infection, and they're supposed to be killed off. But Elspeth, who's the main character, her family hid her, so she basically grew up with magic but was not killed off by the king. And one day something happens. She meets some highwaymen, and these highwaymen basically are people who really want to steal Providence cards. The magic seems really difficult to understand, but basically these Providence cards, they let normal people who do not have magic be able to wield magic. But yeah, Elspeth Spindle met these highwaymen, and she ends up getting revealed to the people that she's actually one of the infected, and they go on this journey to try and figure out how to save the infected people, because the infected people in this world, they go through degeneration when they use their magic too much. And so the whole magic system, the whole storyline was really fun to follow. It's not very fantasy romance. There's not a lot of romance in these fantasy worlds, but I do really like the duology in general. It's really strong. The magic system's great. Plot's amazing. So yeah, I gave this 4.5. Did I mention that? I think I did. Next up, I read the third book of a trilogy, and it's called Gods and Monsters by Shelby Mahurin. This is the third book in the Serpent and Dove trilogy, and if you guys do not know Serpent and Dove, it is about a witch and a witch hunter who ends up getting arranged into a marriage because of some circumstances. And basically in this world, witches are dangerous. They're supposed to be killed off. They wield really strong power, and the main character pretends to be a human, which is actually a witch. It's very enemies to lovers, and I really did enjoy the first book. However, the second book really took all of the excitement from the first book out because I really didn't like the second book. It was very fillery. It felt like a lot of info dumping going on, and I didn't have fun reading that book. I felt so bored. I wanted to skim the book so much. And so when I got into this one, I was just very skeptic about it because this book is really thick. It's thicker than the first 2 books, and I just feel like there's just too much info dumping and too much filler scenes, too many things going on that didn't feel like it helped the plot of this whole trilogy. And so I got into this with not so high expectations, and I was kind of right because the first half of this book was absolutely boring. It didn't excite me at all. I didn't really want to continue reading on. But then I pushed through because I was really excited to actually finish the trilogy. I've been putting it out for so long. The latter half of the book was great. It was fine. Like, I didn't feel like the first half of the book was needed, to be honest. The second and the third book could have been combined to one book. It felt dragged on, felt like there were so many unnecessary plot devices going on with the book. Pretty slow read, but it was overall better than the second book, and I really liked the epilogue. I don't really like epilogues in books, but this one was really good. I loved the epilogue. I felt like it was very much needed, and it really helped the whole story kind of complete on its own. I teared up a little bit in the epilogue, and so I decided to rate this 3 stars. That's my review on Gods and Monsters, but I'm very happy happy that I finally finished a trilogy because I do want to get into the spin-off series. The first book is called The Scarlet Veil and I really want to read that. And then I read a romance. I have been putting this book off as well, and that is By a Thread by Lucy Score. I purchased this last year, I think in the middle of the year, and so I've been putting this off for a while. It's been on my TBR for a while. I finally picked it up. I put it off because of how thick this book is. It's more than 500 pages and it's a basic romance book. But if you guys do know Lucy Score, she does write really thick romance books, and yes, I did enjoy the book. I did feel like it was a little bit too long. Once again, some scenes were not really necessarily needed, and I also really didn't like the third act conflict in this book. And sorry, I forgot to explain what this book is. This is Strangers to Lovers. Dominic is the CEO of this company. Allie is a broke girl living in New York City, trying to live her life, trying to earn money to aid her father because her father is in the hospital, in the hospital. I'm not really too sure what it's called. Her father is sick, and so she needs money to help pay his bills and also to renovate her house because she wants to sell it off. And Dominic and Allie kind of met on the wrong foot. They had a very big quarrel, and so it started off kind of like enemies to lovers in a romance sense, where they're not really enemies, but they kind of hate each other because of the circumstances that they were put in. And Allie somehow gets recruited to Dominic's company, and that's how they kind of go through their romance. It's also workplace romance, if you guys want to know that. I did enjoy the book. I did enjoy the romance. I thought they had really good chemistry, and I really liked Dominic's growth because in the beginning of this book, he was an absolute ass. He didn't treat Allie well. He didn't treat any females well, really, and so I didn't like him in the beginning, but overall he did grow up, he did mature, and so that's why I like this book. But it did feel a little bit draggy because of how thick this book is, and so I ended up rating this a 4 stars. If you guys have read Lucy Score, you'll know that her books are pretty spicy, and so that's my review on By a Thread. The first book I read is the start of a new series, and that is Forever Enchanted by Rebecca Ross. I recently read Ruth's Vows, which is the second book following Divine Rivals Letters of Enchantment duology, I think. I really liked Ruth's Vows, and so I decided to pick up her other duology. This is the Cadence Isle, I'm not really too sure, but the first book is Forever Enchanted. It's a duology once again. The second book is called The Fire Endless. I'm currently reading it right now, and with this book you are following a lot of main characters, but you focus mainly on Adara, who is the heiress of the east of this island called Cadence, and Jack, who is the bard of this island. And Jack used to be in the mainland because he goes to work there, but one day Adara calls him back to the island because girls are going missing in her island, and she's trying to figure out what's the cause of it. The spirits are playing a role into the girls going missing, and I really like this book. It kind of feels like a folk tale, so if you are not really into that, I don't think you will like this duology. Even though I'm not really into folk tales, I think this one was very interesting. I really like the world that you're living in. The spirits playing a role into the world is very fun. I feel like with this book you don't really get too much in depth with the world of the spirits, but in the second book you see a lot of the world building kind of come to life, and I really like that. I had a lot of fun reading this book. I thought that it was slow, but it was just like a fun type of slow where you're just vibing with the characters of this island. So I did end up reading this 4 stars, and this is absolutely no spice whatsoever. So, and yeah, it was a really good fantasy world. I had fun with this, so that is that. And then I read a duology. I didn't read this back to back. It is the Debutantes duology by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. The first book is Little White Lies. The second book is Deadly Little Scandals. This is the only 2 books I have not read in Jennifer Lynn Barnes' backlist, so that's why I picked this up. And I did end up rating, I think, both books 3.5 because she does really well with mystery in books, and I like her short chapters. It makes it feel like the story is going on really quickly. It's really fast paced, and so pacing wise I did have fun with the book. But with this duology, what I feel like is I didn't feel connected with any of the characters. They didn't feel very interesting as characters, and I didn't really care too much about them as people. All I cared about was the mystery and trying to figure out what the plot of this book is. If you guys do not know this duology, you basically follow Sawyer, who lives with her single mom, but one day her maternal grandmother, who is her mom's mom, comes in to offer her a deal at which she will give Sawyer $500,000 in trust fund, and in return she follows her to go and join the debutantes in her town. And Sawyer goes not because of the money, but because she wants to figure out who her biological father is. And so that whole mystery plot line was interesting, but overall the characters didn't feel interesting. Plot was great, but character development didn't interest me that much. And then I read Fuel the Fire by Krista and Becca Ritchie, which is the 8th book in the Addicted World series, and this is the second book of Rose and Connor's story. I love Rose and Connor. If you guys do not know the Addicted series, they are following a group of 6 people. I've heard a lot of people say this, but the Addicted series just feels like a character study of these 6 people, and I had a lot of fun with the other books of the series, and so when I picked this up I knew I was gonna have fun, especially because this is about Rose and Connor, who are my favorite couple of this whole series. And I rated the first book of theirs, Kiss the Sky, 5 stars. So I did have high expectations going into Fuel the Fire. They didn't disappoint. I did love Connor Cobalt in this. I loved his character growth in this especially. I just really liked seeing his thoughts, and I felt like in this book you really see a lot of Connor more than Rose. I think he's one of the most unique characters I've read in a book, and so getting to know him as a character just is really fun, and I did have fun with the book. It flowed really well. I did end up rating this a 4.5 and not a full 5 stars because for some reason with this book the spice was kind of cringy. I did have fun with Fuel the Fire, just not the spice, and so 4.5 it is. And then I read a series. I didn't finish the series because the last book is not out yet, but I'm just gonna talk about them all together because I just feel like it's just easier to talk about them all together. The series I'm talking about is the Kingdom of Lies series by Sasha Stark. The last book is coming out in May, I think, and so I have only read the first 3 books. The first book is A Court This Cruel and Lovely. The second book is A Kingdom This Cursed and Empty. And the third book is A Crown This Cold and Heavy. So in this series you follow Priska, and in the world that you live in, these people, when they're born they have magic, and when they're babies their magic will get taken away from them, and when they turn 25 years old their magic will be returned, but not in full because some of the magic will be eaten by the gods. There are also fae, and the human and the fae have gone to war before, and so in order to protect themselves the human asks the gods for help, and that's why the magic is taken by the gods. Priska is one of those rare people who, even though had her magic taken away from her, her magic continued to grow in size, and she ends up being a full-fledged adult who has magic in her. These people are called corrupt, and they're supposed to be killed off. But one day obviously Priska gets figured out that she actually has magic, and so she flees the town that she lives in, and she ends up meeting a few mercenaries while she's escaping, and they end up helping her hone her magic, and she also learns a lot about the world that she lives in and when she's corrupt and all that. For my ratings, the first book I rated 3.25, second book I rated 3.5, and the third book I rated a 3. I just talk one by one, I guess. So the first book, it was great. World building was great. I felt like it was a really good romantasy book, but I felt like the writing was very clunky. It felt very awkward sometimes. Pacing was not really that good. The plot and the world building was okay, but I also felt like the world building wasn't really delved into that much. So there were a lot of plot holes when it comes to the magic and things that are happening in this book. And then we get on to the second book, where the first half of this was basically info dumping. But the only reason why I rated this a bit higher was because the plot was explored a little bit more, and I also felt like there were a lot more character development with this book. There were extra POVs in this book, but I didn't feel like they were useless POVs, and I did enjoy seeing into the other characters' point of views. The side characters felt like they were kind of part of the story, and so I didn't feel like this book was bad. Writing was still a bit clunky, but overall a bit better than the first book. And this book bored me out a lot. I did feel like the world building kind of grew as the story went on, but now it suddenly feels like the world building was just messy. It just felt like the plot was messy. I didn't rate this 3 stars actually. I think I rated 2.5. Actually, I rated this 2.5, not 3 stars. I just remembered when you read a series, you're supposed to feel like the fantasy world is getting better, but it just feels like it's getting messier in this book, and also very info dumpy. Romance is getting a little bit cringy in this book. I felt like these two were okay, but this one just felt absolute cringe. That's why this is a 2.5 stars. I will be reading the last book because I just feel like I want to finish the series. I don't know if I recommend the series, but if you guys want to find a very easy to read good romantasy book, I guess this is okay. You get more and more romance with each book, and I just feel like it took away from the world and the plot that you live in, because I feel like the plot is great but not really executed very well. And the last book I read in this month is Bride by Ali Hazelwood, and this is the only 5-star book I have. After reading this book, I watched a lot of other YouTubers thoughts about this book, their reading vlogs, and also their wrap-ups about this book, and I do feel like there are mixed reviews about this book. Some people don't really like it, especially what happens in the latter half of the book, and also the spice in this book. But I think as somebody who really enjoyed reading Omegaverse books back in 2015, 2017 in Wattpad, I just really love the book. I really like werewolves and vampires and werewolf lingo. I think it's just, for me, this book hit because of how much I loved it when I was young. It felt nostalgic. It felt like a part of me was woken up, and so I had a lot of fun with this book. I loved the romance, and I loved Misery and Low together, and I love Ali Hazelwood's writing. I love her tropes, and I feel like the way she writes her stories just just hits me. I think you'll have fun with this book if you guys like Omegaverse books. Those are my thoughts about Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I am so happy about this. I am so excited for Ali Hazelwood's other new release later on in June, I think. I am so freaking excited. And yeah, those are the books that I read in February. I apologize for the lighting change because apparently it's starting to get gloomy. It's been like this for the past few days. It's been really sunny in the morning and it suddenly gets really gloomy. It's not even 2 p.m. yet, but hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this wrap up. I had so much fun talking about these books, especially thinking about Bride again. I really want to reread that book because it just makes me feel so nostalgic. Hopefully March will be a good reading month. I am also going to go watch Taylor Swift in a few days. I'm so freaking excited. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you guys enjoyed watching this, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.